Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful, transformative, awakening planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here for another fun, inspiring, encouraging, motivational episode of what we do here on Inspired Living. And today we're going to have just a nice, frank, spiritual, and logical discussion on the official Pentagon report that has come out on UAPs and UFOs. We're going to talk about the spirituality behind it. We're going to talk about the science behind it. We're going to also talk about how this world is changing. And you may have listened to a previous episode I did, I think it was about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and that episode's gotten a lot of plays on our several podcast channels that Inspired Living Radio is broadcasting through, and it was called Alien Contact and the Pale Blue Dot and How Humanity Transforms. And the pale blue dot is a concept that Carl Sagan, who is a famous astrologer and scientist and wrote the movie Contact, he talked about this little pale blue dot in the universe when the Voyager was sent out almost 50 years ago. Looking back, it took a picture of the planet Earth from millions of miles away, and it just sat in this pale beam of light. It was actually quite spiritual. It was quite extraordinary to have that picture sent back to the Earth. And today we're going to just be talking about the official report that is now out, that came out on June 25th, 2021, from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. It is an unclassified report, which means that there is another classified report that it's not yet available to the public. But it's a preliminary assessment on the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon, or what we call UAPs. Now, it's just interesting that UAPs are the same darn thing that we've been calling for 75 years, which are also UFOs. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the next hour to talk about this and a spiritual concept, a scripture, what scripture talks about, different aspects of what first contact would look like, what it would feel like. And the quote that I want to start with, because I think it's very relevant to today's discussion, because awareness, when we have awareness to something and we actually confirm that there is something out there that we don't understand, or as the X-Files used to say, the truth is out there, that really starts a ripple effect. It starts an energy from a metaphysical standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. It starts an effect where people really start to have these conversations, and logical conversations, not little green men and wearing tinfoil hats and all of these different far out stuff, but really a scientific method, a scientific approach to what is going on in our planet. It's just interesting that everything is going on our planet, from this report. Why now? Why in 2021 this report, after 75 years of talking about this, has now been officially released? Why is it that we have an official department called Space Force? Why is it now that those that serve in Space Force are actually called Guardians? And now we're seeing, from a historical standpoint, we're seeing the billionaires fly to space. We just saw everything that Elon Musk is doing with Starbase down in Texas. We're seeing everything that Jeff Bezos is doing with his recent rocket to space, and it was the first rocket sent with no astronauts. They were all private civilians put on this rocket just last week and sent to 63 miles up into space to float around for 4 minutes and then come and descend right back down. And then, of course, you have Sir Richard Branson, who launched from his new base in New Mexico. So it's just interesting that all of this is coming together. And we're going to just talk about this preliminary assessment. I've got the official report in front of me. I think it's important to talk about. But with the quote I love about this, what I'm going to open the show with is, who is more humble? The scientist who looks at the universe with an open mind and accepts whatever the universe has to teach us, or somebody who says everything in this book must be considered literal truth and never mind the fallibility of all human beings involved. Now, he also goes on to say that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And this, in my humble opinion, because I have a personal experience that I talked about in my previous show, Alien Contact, the Pale Blue Dot, and How Humanity Transforms. And like I said, it's been viewed many times now, so people are interested on this. But it does. It requires extraordinary evidence. And this report is an official report from our government, the first time ever that would literally start to say that there is evidence of something that we are not aware of, or how it works from the laws of physics, from a national security standpoint. And, it really does break down. Now, it's only 9 pages. So for everybody, for those of us that have been talking about full disclosure, first contact, metamaterial, element 115, you can look all those up on your own. It was very disappointing report because it's only 9 pages in length for the unclassified, which means the classified is probably much longer. But what it does is it acknowledges, an acknowledgement, as Eckhart Tolle teaches us, the greatest agent for change is awareness. This awareness that our government doesn't know what these UAPs are, these little tic tacs that defy the laws of gravity. They seem to come around at times in our history where there's strong nuclear capabilities or testing of nuclear weapons or conflicts. And it's just interesting to watch from a scientific standpoint how these interactions are taking place. So it does start on the first page about the scope and the assumptions that are usually tied to UFOs or UAPs. And for today's episode, as just a kind of a follow-up to that first episode that I did, let's talk about just a few different things, and then we'll break into the report, and I'll actually read from the actual official report, which I was excited to read and disappointed at the same time because it just didn't really. It actually, I think it presented more questions than it did answers. So let's talk about what a close encounter is. If you've ever had something, a UFO is an unidentified flying object. A UAP is an unidentified aerial phenomenon. They're the same darn thing. It's just the government has rebranded it, and I think they're rebranding it, in my humble opinion, to make it more accessible to the public. Now, one of the things that I always look at when it comes to close encounters, I always go back to the 1977 movie of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And of course, when that movie came out, which was right after Star Wars, May 25th, 1977, Star Wars came out, and then later that summer, Close Encounters came out. And everybody's saying, well, what's the third kind? Well, if this is the third kind, what's the first kind? What's the second kind? So the first kind of close encounters, which almost everybody on this planet has had some sort of phenomenon, some sort of experience of the first kind, and that's just visual sightings of an identified flying object. It can be less than 500 feet away, and it can show, different extensions and considerable detail. That would be considered the first kind of a close encounter. And like I said, with all of the technology that's out today, a lot of people today, more than ever, with drones and, airplanes and smaller aircraft, and now we have hovercrafts, and, those from a distance can be classified as a close encounter of the first kind because it's just an unidentified flying object. Now, when we get into the second kind, this is a UFO event or a UAP event, which a physical effect is actually alleged. There's an interference with, many people talk about their vehicle shutting down, electronic devices, going haywire, animals reacting, kind of an effect on either paralysis of heat or discomfort to those that are witnessing. This is that second kind. So there's some sort of energy, vibrational frequency interactions with our gadgets and even just with our own nervous system that takes place. And it also can leave behind on the close encounter of a second kind. It can leave like a scorched effect or a chemical trace or crop circles. These would be of the second kind. And we have seen those with the famous crop circles in England around Stonehenge, a very high area of, contact with this, whatever this is. Now, when I say UFOs and UAPs, that doesn't insinuate little green men, but it does insinuate a intelligence that we just don't understand, that it actually does many things that seems to be more advanced than us than anything on the earth. Now, when we get into Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which the movie is based on, and there's some interesting things about Close Encounters that people don't know about the movie, that Spielberg, originally it was going to be a different film. Spielberg's initial storyline involved UFOs and a shady government dealings following what we would call the Watergate scandal during the Nixon administration. And then it became a script entitled Watch the Skies. That's what it was actually first going to be. And the idea involved a police or military officer working for, at that time, which is called Project Blue Book. And if you're not familiar with Project Blue Book, you can look all this stuff up. This isn't Mark's opinion. This is actual recorded history and money that actually is dedicated to actual projects to understand what is going on. And now, this is the Air Force's official study into the UFOs in the 1950s and the 1960s would be that Project Blue Book, and who would become that whistleblower on the government cover-up of aliens. So there was a lot of rewrites to the movie, and eventually it became, named after legitimate UFO research, and it was tied to the third kind. So the third kind is when UFO encounters in which an animated entity is actually present. This could include robots. This could include us as humans. This could be another species who seem to have the intelligence to occupy or to pilot a UFO. And a UFO could also be a drone, which means if it's a drone, it's still being driven, just like in today's technology. We have drones that can fly thousands of miles away at very fast speeds and be very accurate, but somebody is flying that drone. There's a humanoid, there's a human, there's a pilot, there's a military member that's flying that drone. So that would be a close encounter of the third kind, where we actually have a physical entity that is interacting, and it comes in the way of flying some sort of research or some sort of experiment that's farther than what we know today. So as we get into the just kind of the levels of contact, Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind is now where we get the abduction. And there's been lots of movies. And when this report was first mandated to come out in 2019 during the pandemic, a lot of people I felt had some justification for people those that have claimed to have been abducted. I think we're starting to feel a little bit, maybe I'm not insane, maybe I'm not crazy, and now the government is saying, yeah, there could be encounters of the fourth kind in which a human is abducted by a UFO or its occupants, and researched or studied, or hopefully not anything nefarious. Maybe it's just to observe us, but that would be a close encounter of the fifth kind. And of course, lots of movies based on that. Cases that date back for years, literally decades of this. This isn't nothing new. And then we get into close encounters of the fifth kind. And a close encounter of the fifth kind is a UFO event that involves direct communication between aliens and humans. This type of close encounter was named after Dr. Stephen Greer of SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence group, and it's described as bilateral contact experiences through conscious, voluntary, and proactive human-initiated cooperative communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. Whew, say that 3 times fast. So that is the fifth kind, and that's where I believe that we are at. Because if we backtrack on everything I just said from the first kind, seeing it, I've seen it, I saw it in my previous show. I talked about it with my days in the Coast Guard off the coast of Puerto Rico, which is the tip of the Bermuda Triangle. I saw these 3 green lights. They separated. They came back together. They shot down into the water. We didn't talk about it because at the time you just didn't want to be made fun of on the ship. Second kind is, going back is, there's a lot of interactions. I've been watching a great series called The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch in northern Utah. The land has a history all the way back to Native Americans talking about the area and the land, and how things go wonky, and how the animals are have a strange behavior in this area. So it's a really great episode. It's a really great series for the fact that they're bringing in a lot of experts and a lot of scientists and trying to debunk. And the more they try to debunk, the door opens and the rabbit hole goes much deeper when they try to debunk something. So that's the second kind. Third kind, of course, is just an interaction like we saw in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And just so you know, that movie had a budget of $19.4 million. The box office total was $306.1 million. So there is a following. I always say follow the money when it comes to this, whether it's follow the money in government agencies, follow the money in movies. There is an interest. There is a fascination. There is a curiosity about what UAPs are and what UFOs are. And like I said, a budget of $19.4 million today, back in 1977, and then be able to clean up $306.1 million at the box office, that says something. And so that's the third kind, where we actually have the interaction, the music, the hand signals, and of course the fourth kind is an interesting movie I watched with that was the Fourth Kind, which takes place in Nome, Alaska, which has had a lot of experiences with people talking about abductions by UFOs. And now we're caught up to the fifth kind. And I think that's where we are with this report. This report is now saying that, there's something out here. I'm going to read from the report. And this goes, this conversation goes back to all the way back to Kenneth Arnold. The first UFO sighting was June 24th, 1947. And when I mean first official, it's the first official where this pilot, Kenneth Arnold, had claimed over FAA radio as a pilot. He was actually interacting here in Seattle, Washington. He was flying from Chehalis, Washington to Yakima, Washington. I'm here in West Seattle. And he was actually on a detour around Mount Rainier, because at the time there was a $5,000 reward for the discovery of a U.S. Marine Corps C-46 transport airplane that had crashed somewhere near Mount Rainier. So the skies were completely clear. There was maybe a mild wind, but he was looking for this. And when he didn't find this plane trying to claim the reward, he got back on course. And as he was doing that, he saw, or he claimed to have seen, a string of 9 shiny, unidentified flying objects flying past Mount Rainier at speeds that, at the time, Kenneth Arnold had estimated between 1,200 miles an hour. Now, this is back in 1947. We didn't have technology of the time to go that fast, because our fastest plane today, the F-35, goes around 1,500 miles an hour with can reach up to Gs of 9 Gs. So the time frame doesn't fit, but he's reporting at an estimate of 1,200 miles an hour, and this is post World War II. So, and this is where the flying saucer, the way he described it over the FAA radio airwaves, then becomes recorded and it becomes an official report. And of course, the press quickly started coining the term flying saucer and flying disc as a popular descriptive term for what we call UFOs or UAPs today. So this goes all the way back to 1947, which would also put us in the time frame of Area 51. A lot of mountains around the world, like Mount Rainier, like Mount Shasta, have interactions with flying discs or aerial phenomenon, and it's just very interesting. But where we're at today is now we have an official report. We actually have an official network called the MUFON UFO Network, MUFON. And MUFON is where you can actually go to the site and you can actually look at all of the different, including the preliminary assessment for this report that I'm reading from today. But there is all of the current reports, sightings, radar hits. I mean, it's just, I'm just looking on the site right now. Silver disc hovers over Missouri. Bizarre UFO photographed over Florida. 6 objects maneuver in Colorado skies. Black disc lands in Ohio cornfield. Delta-shaped object silhouetted by the moon. Boomerang reported over Long Beach. Multicolored sound and light shown over Ohio. Black chevron sighted over Tennessee. That's just the recent, and they get all sorts. Now, of course, with everything, they're alleged. You're gonna have to validate, and like Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But we have a reporting system called MUFON. We have the SETI Institute, which is a search for extraterrestrial intelligence. That's actually beaming out and receiving back and observing and monitoring for different forms of radio signals. And we shouldn't be surprised, you guys. We sent out Voyager over almost 50 years ago, right before I was born, with a signal saying, hey, this is where we're at. We're on the third rock from the sun. Here's our DNA. Here's some music of the time. It's all implanted and printed on a gold record on the Voyager spacecraft, which has now officially left our galaxy. And it shouldn't be surprising that if we've put ourselves out there and introduced ourselves, that we should now start to be receiving notifications with these tic-tacs that fly at an estimated 35,000 miles per hour. That's pretty, think about that, 35,000 miles an hour estimated. And these are from very credible witnesses and Navy pilots and experts in there in what they do. And that would put a G-force of about 5,500 Gs. Nothing on Earth can sustain that. So these tic-tacs that are flying around, and what's interesting about all of this in our discussion today is, this spiritual and logical discussion on the official Pentagon report is that we have tracking capabilities. Our technologies has now allowed us to detect and become aware of things that are traveling at very high speeds of velocity. And if they're traveling at high speeds of 35,000 miles an hour, we have to start having conversations and thoughts and debates about multi-dimension, because when something speeds up, whether it's mass or energy, as Einstein talked about, the only difference is the speed at which it vibrates. So right now, you're hearing my voice because we're vibrating. I'm in a human physical body vibrating at a certain frequency, but if I speed my frequency up, my mass actually changes. I'm still energy. You just may not see my physical mass because I'm speeding up. And that's what these objects appear to be doing. They don't leave any sonic boom. They travel at 35,000 miles an hour estimated with 5,500 Gs. They can bank at 90 degrees on a dime, which means that technology is surpasses anything that we have on Earth. If it was our enemies that had that, or our other nations that had that, they would have already used it against us, because that's just the way of the world. So it's just interesting that these tic-tacs are defying the laws of gravity. They defy the laws of aerodynamics as we understand them with the gravity of Earth. They don't have wings. They go fast speeds. They defy the laws of physics. And it's just interesting that we have technology that has allowed us to at least scan and track them, and that's the first step. That would now start to take us down the different levels of first contact, second contact, the first kind, the second kind, the third kind, the fifth kind. The sixth kind is which we're not going to really go into. There's 7 kinds, but it's really the death of a human or an animal associated with the UFO sighting, channeling alien entities, intrusion or parasitic attachment by extraterrestrial consciousness. And then the 7th kind is the creation of a human or alien hybrid, either by any kind of reproduction or artificial scientific methods. Hopefully we don't go there. I don't know. But I know that we've had at least 5 kinds of what's been going on. And the 6th kind, it's interesting that we do have a pandemic. I'm not saying that the pandemic has come from aliens, but it's just interesting with everything that's going on, the space race, the next industrial revolution, billionaires going to space, the Space Force, this pandemic, and now we have an official report that we're going to go to our first break, and when we come back, we are going to pick up, and I'm going to start to read right from the official report and continue to have this spiritual and logical discussion on the official Pentagon report for UAPs and UFOs. So we'll be back here in 2 minutes. This is Inspired Living Radio. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
listeners. We hope you're enjoying the shows here on OMTimes Radio. Marc Lainhart here and host of Inspired Living Radio. And I'd like to invite you to my morning show of inspiration, encouragement, healing, motivations, transformations, and discovering that diamond within. Metaphysical Mocha Mondays every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, over on the Intuitive Prospector Facebook page and my YouTube channel, Soul Adventures. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Imagination will often carry us to worlds that never were, but without it, we go nowhere. Again, another quote from the famous, very intelligent Carl Sagan, who many years ago knew about the universe, connected to the universe, knew that we weren't alone. And he also said the cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the universe to know itself. And that's very true. In fact, today we're talking about just the follow-up. This is a follow-up show to the first show that I did a few months ago, talking about alien contact, the pale blue dot, and how humanity transforms. And this was previous to the government report that is now officially out. And with Inspired Living Radio, we look at everything from spirituality, religion, metaphysics, psychic, mediumship, intuition, mindfulness, awareness. And it all comes back to awareness is the greatest agent for change. And with this official report, this is where we're starting to have the change in our world. I just don't know how else to explain it. It just seems like the world is carving off into two different directions, the third dimension and those that want to reside there. And the third dimension is our reality, with our jobs and the chaos and the violence and the wars and the politics. And it seems that there's another shift, I guess. I don't know what to call it, maybe a spiritual stir or a spiritual shift where people are moving forward into more of a fourth and fifth dimensional way of thinking about our planet, thinking about others, thinking about empathy, which is the highest form of intelligence that a species can have, care for others, equality, getting rid of racism and systemic racism and any kind of, trafficking of any sorts, whether it's children or drugs. There just seems to be this big shift going on. So why not throw in, this pandemic that has divided people between vaccinated and unvaccinated, and throw in now aliens, about those that, believe in aliens like myself and in unidentified flying objects or UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, because I've had a personal experience. And then, of course, there's those that are, always going to say you're crazy, or, you're hallucinating. But the old saying goes, how come is it when we have a hallucination, personal hallucination or a person experience, people call that insanity, but when somebody else has an hallucination or a divine experience, we call that religion? Just something to think about, because we're going to be talking about a little bit of scripture and how the world changes if we do find extraterrestrial life. So let's get into the report. Let's talk about just the logic of it, because again, the report's very clear in what it was looking at, and it's only 9 pages. It is it's unclassified. The scope is the report is to provide by the Office of the National Intelligence, or the ODNI, is a response to the provision in the Senate Report 116-233, which accompanies the Intelligent Authorization Act, or the IAA, for fiscal year 2021. The DNI, which is the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense, also known as the SecDef in acronyms, is to submit an intelligence assessment on the threat posed by unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs, which is just a rebranding by government terms of UFOs, and the progress the Department of Defense Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, also known as the UAPTF, has made in understanding this threat. So that's the scope of the report and the assumptions of the report. And what we want to do is look at that in the fact that we have awareness to it, and we have a task force looking at it, and that means that there's money following it. So the report provides an overview for policymakers of the challenges associated with characterizing the potential threat posed by a UAP/UFO, while also providing a means to develop relevant processes, policies, technologies, and training for the U.S. military and other U.S. government personnel if and when they encounter a UAP/UFO, so as to enhance the intelligent community's ability to understand the threat. So the director is the accountable official for ensuring the timely collection and consolidation of data on UAPs. And in the report, it just says UAPs, but I'm putting in parentheses UFOs for our listeners out there because it's the same darn thing, to be honest with you. And the data set described in this report is currently limited primarily to U.S. government reporting of incidents occurring from November 2004 to March of 2021. So we're talking a span of over a decade, well over a decade, of collecting data within the U.S. government reporting agencies, and data continues to be collected and analyzed. So it's interesting that they only looked at this perspective based on their own reporting. It's interesting, and I'll be curious to see when they start to branch out and start to work with SETI, and they start to work with MUFON, and they start to work with other agencies that are literally tracking these on a daily basis. Like I said before the break, I just was reading some of the daily encounters that MUFON registers from all around the United States, but also around the world. It's not just happening here in the United States. So the ODNI, or the Office of National Intelligence, prepared this report for the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Service Committees because they had requested it in the first, it would be the first pandemic package that went out. They rolled that into the package that they had to report something because these Navy pilots and our Navy were seeing things that they didn't understand, and they were worried that they weren't so worried that it was what they were seeing. They were worried that the technology of their tracking information was going to get out because that was actually that was classified, and it was starting to leak out that we have this technology with the ability to track. So it really wasn't about the UAP or the UFO itself. It was about the technology around the ability to track them. So that's where the government started getting involved because it was a national security classified technology that was showing out on leaked videos that you've seen recently from 2017 and 2004. And so what that did is it started this chain reaction of briefings, briefings that go back years. This isn't the first time that this has come out, but this is the first time that an intelligence report has been released to the public by our government. So this includes this has input from, let's see here. It prepared the report, and it has the National Intelligence Manager for Aviation drafted this report with input from the USD, the DIA, the FBI, the NRO, the NGA, the NSA, Air Force, Army, Navy, Navy/ONI. You have to look up these because I don't know all of them. DARPA, FAA, NOAA, NGA, ODNI/MIN Engineering, and Disruptive Technology, which is also called ODNI National Counterintelligence and Security Center, and ODNI National Intelligence Council. That is what this is who the sources are from a government standpoint. So they've been working with all the agencies within the government to put this report together. And I know from my own personal experience of writing reports, to put 9 pages together is really a slap in the face to the public, because when I worked on reports for Capitol Hill and Congress in my federal day job, we would have, an investigation, and it would be a 21-page report. So you're telling me 9 pages of the unclassified version. I would be curious to know what the classified version and how many pages that contains. So the assumptions of this report: Various forms of sensors that register UAP generally operate correctly and capture enough real data to allow initial assessments, but some UAPs may contribute or have sensor anomalies, is what it says in the report. So with the executive summary, the limited amount of high-quality reporting of unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs, or UFOs, hampers our ability to draw firm conclusions about the nature or intent of UAPs. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force considered a range of information on UAPs described in the U.S. military and the intelligence community reporting this, but because the reporting lacks sufficient specificity, ultimately recognized that a unique, tailored reporting process was required to provide sufficient data for analysis of UAP events. As a result, the UAPTF, the task force, concentrated its review on reports that occurred between 2004 and 2021. We've been having this conversation for over 75 years, the majority of which are a result of this new tailored process to better capture UAPs, UFOs, events through formalized reporting. So now we have a report that's telling us there's a task force, there's a space force, there's money, there's congressional input, there's government input, and now we have a tailored process to better, quote unquote, capture UAP events through formalized reporting. So now they have a formalized reporting, but this reporting's been going on with MUFON since, how long has MUFON been in the works? They're the oldest. They're one of the first. And let's see here. MUFON is an all-volunteer nonprofit 501c charitable corporation and is the world's oldest and largest civilian UFO investigation and research organization. So it doesn't say when they started, but they do claim to be the oldest. So I'm just curious why our government didn't work with them. So, but it also says in this report that most of the UAPs reported probably do represent physical objects, given that a majority of UAP were registered across multiple sensors to include radar, infrared, electronic, optical, weapon seekers, and visual observation. Again, we have technology that allows us to track them, and maybe that's that first step of letting them know that we have technology that lets them know that we can track them, and that's going to start this unfolding, if you will. So let's see here. In a limited number of incidents, UAP reportedly appeared to exhibit unusual flight characteristics. They don't really go into detail, but I can tell you from the research I've done, these objects are traveling at very high speeds, 35,000 miles an hour, estimated with over 5,500 G forces. Our pilots pass out between 5 Gs and 9 Gs. They don't leave any kind of sonic boom. They make no sounds. They have no wings. They defy the laws of gravity here on the Earth, and they defy the laws of physics. But they, in this report, say it's exhibited unusual flight characteristics. These observations could be the result of sensor error, spoofing, or observer misperception and require additional rigorous analysis, which is true. And that goes back to, what Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But there are probably multiple types of UAPs requiring different explanations based on the range of appearances and behaviors described in the available reporting. So UAPs clearly pose a safety or flight issue and may pose a challenge to U.S. national security. So that's just the first few pages of the report. You can go to MUFON. You can go to my Facebook page, the Intuitive Prospector, and the report's there. The link is there. You can also go to marclainhart.com. I've got a link at marclainhart.com if you want to look at there. And you can read this in a little bit more depth. I'm not going to read all 9 pages, but I can tell you that in this report, there was 144 reports originated from all of the sources. Of these, 80 reports involved observation with multiple sensors. And out of the 144, there's only one that they could debunk. 18 incidents described in 21 reports. Observers reported unusual UAP movements, patterns, and flight characteristics. And that means that there's a lot out there that they have not identified. And like I said, with this report in the brief 9 pages, it literally leaves more questions than answers, and it's very brief in its entire scope of the report. But it's out there. I hope that you go check that out. And I wanted just to also talk about, in the time that we have left, what does that look like if, how would it look like if we actually confirm extraterrestrial life? In 1938, Orson Welles narrated a radio broadcast called The War of the Worlds, and it was a series of simulated radio bulletins on what was happening in real time as Martians arrived on our home planet. And the broadcast is widely remembered. I was just talking to my parents about this about this 1938 radio show, and the broadcast is widely remembered for creating a huge public panic. And although to what extent, it's pretty hotly debated today, but it did create a panic. But still, the incident itself serves, I think, as an illustration of what could happen when the first life beyond Earth is discovered. While scientists and spiritualists like myself might be excited by that prospect, introducing the world to something bigger than ourselves, it's probably the biggest question ever asked: are we alone? I would imagine that public and politicians and maybe special interest groups to the idea could take some time, and I think that's what we're seeing with this report. Is it's taken the government and politicians and senators and representatives to come to this term after a 75-year discussion on this. Of people are seeing something, so what is it, and is it a threat to our country as we get ready to go into space, which is the next industrial revolution, whether we're mining off asteroids or comets, which are going to create new materials, new technologies, new way of travel. We're seeing right now with everything, we've got, we got a star base in Texas. We got another one in New Mexico. We've got technologies that are taking non-astronauts to space. It's always been a government agency, and now that's been, moved into the corporate private sector. And how would the existence of extraterrestrial life change our worldview? And it could even just, it doesn't even have to be little green men. It could literally be at the, the level of, just biology with, understanding that there's life, that it's in a different format based on its environment. And, this goes back to, Stephen Dick, who he completed a term at the NASA Library of Congress, and he was the chair of the astrobiology. He talked about this with a sponsored NASA astrobiology program and the John W. Klug Center at the Library of Congress. And he's a former astronomer and historian at the United States Naval Observatory and a past chief historian for NASA. And he's published several books concerning this discovery of life beyond Earth. And he said even the discovery of microbes would be a profound shift for science, because if we find microbes, it doesn't have to be little green men, it would have an effect on science, especially biology. By universalizing biology, he said we'd only have one case of biology on Earth, and it's all related. It's all DNA-based. If we found an independent example, let's say on Mars or one of the moons of Saturn like Europa, we would have a chance of forming a new universal biology never before seen in history. And there's an interesting discussion going on. A fossil that was found, a Martian meteorite had been found in Antarctica, and that's a whole other discussion. Antarctica, as it starts to melt, is going to reveal some big secrets to our planet, including different microbes and viruses. But it's called ALH 8401 or ALH 84001, and what it is, it started to come into the public's consciousness in 1996. After a science article said structures inside of it could be linked to a biological activity. And with that conclusion still being debated today, but it started to lead to these congressional hearings. And you can read more about his work. His name is Stephen Dick, and he has been in the whole life beyond our planet from a biology standpoint. So that's one way that it changes based on life without being little green men. If you follow Gaia, it's a great channel that has a lot of great episodes on this exact topic about are we alone. There's one called Deep Space. There's one called Ancient Civilizations and connections to UAPs even in ancient civilizations. I had a friend that came back from Egypt, and he had posted a picture that he'd taken of one of the sarcophaguses on the wall, and it literally showed modern day ships. And we're talking 3,000-4,000 years ago. But they've got, unexplained mysteries, and again, the Skinwalker Ranch, Cosmic Disclosure. There's a lot of UFO documentaries, and there's a new 4-part documentary coming out on Showtime that is J.J. Abrams, who did the latest Star Wars. So I'm excited to see what that's going to do. But it's a 4-part documentary series of, what is going on in our world. There's something going on. We're now officially starting to track it and acknowledge it and have awareness. And that's the discussion we're having today. Is it starts with, curiosity. It starts with the role of wonder. How does that tie into religion? How would Jesus and aliens get along? From Christianity to Catholicism to aliens. I was raised in Catholicism, and it's really the role of the role of wonder. The first thing that comes into mind is how pastimes like stargazing, or think about the universe and what might be in it. We all look up. It's been a privileged path to experience wonder. Not to be afraid. Nothing is incompatible in my judgment. Many scriptures from Psalms 3 through 8 talk about, the view of the human-centric view of the universe. There's a lot of scriptures that refer to our universe. Romans 8:19 comes to mind. God is a God of universe, not just the God of planet Earth, so we have to think bigger. And, I think that there's just a lot of great stuff out there, and we're starting to see it. And, do your research, of course, do your own research. Like I said, I think that they've been around for a long time. I don't find them to be nefarious. I think if they were, they would have, whether from a resource standpoint or to harm us, they would have already done that, because, again, they show a higher form of intelligence, which means observation, which means not, violence is a very low form of intelligence. Empathy is a very high form of intelligence. I think that there's empathy there. But of course, with our planet the way we are, I would be very mindful about how I would introduce myself to this planet if I was an evolved being, millions of years ahead of us. But, it just goes to show, countless civilizations have looked to the stars for truth about life, revelations, answers from God. What is God? The ancient Greeks viewed star constellations as stories and warnings placed in the skies by their Olympians. The Nazca lines of Peru were etched into the desert as signs of reverence to their gods above. And I've always been interested in how they drew them at the time, because there was no way to get up in the air to actually see what you were drawing. But, and astrologists use the placement of our planets in our solar system today to predict the events of tomorrow. Thousands of different cultures, societies, and people all around the planet have viewed Earth's atmosphere as the home of celestial beings. And, it wasn't until 1961 when, Yuri Gagarin became the first human from Russia to begin the journey to outer space that we discovered, once finally, that there are no gods physically inhabiting Earth's atmosphere. We are a planet, this pale blue dot, in a universe that spans thousands and thousands and millions and billions of distances that's mathematically incomprehensible. And that, of course, creates new thousands of theories about life beyond Earth, what humans would believe to be true. And, therefore, life has to exist. To think that we're the only species intelligence that's in a universe this big is pretty arrogant, pretty naive, pretty confident, that's what we do as humans. So, the government does have, a plan in place for if and when we finally make alien contact. And I think this report is, right on, saying to the public, yes, we know that there's something there. We're acknowledging it. We're tracking it. We're putting money behind it. We've got a task force to it. We now have a space force with Guardians. We are doing our research, because that's what they're going to do first, is they're going to first do their research. Next, they're going to start getting a little bit closer. So this is what I call the drip format that I've been talking about for almost 2 years, where it's just going to be slowly dripping into the consciousness, public, having conversations, doing documentaries. We start getting a little bit closer, start to, gather data and start to analyze and, taking that step to get closer. And then we're going to make sure they're not a threat. That's going to be what you're going to be seeing coming up in our roaring 20s of this next decade, making sure they're not a threat to national security, our military bases, our satellites. And what we're going to do is we're going to, it sounds a little paranoid, but our government military is paranoid. And we're going to start to do direct research towards military and their technology to better understanding how they're defining the laws of our gravity and our physics as we know it today. Because we always say in spirituality is the the physics that is known today, but we've known for a long time, is much different. And then we're going to try to make contact from afar. So whether it's a drone, I think that's what they're doing. And then, of course, that's going to include, being seen and making communications. And then, of course, meeting the face-to-face. One of my favorite, as we get ready to close the show here, one of my favorite movies that really depicts a first contact scenario, and I think it already happened. I think the actual story was actually brought into the movie aspect to be more acceptable. It's called Arrival. It came out in 1996. It had a budget of $47 million. The box office total was $203.4 million. So again, a very big interest in what first contact looks like, what full disclosure looks like, and how we communicate, because it ain't going to be communication through English or Spanish or Italian or French. It's going to be in the ways of symbols, signs, sounds, frequencies. They will look different from us because they are going to be creatures of their environment and adapt to their own environment. The question is, do they come from outer space, or do they come from our own planet and have been here all along? The planet's 70% water. We know about 15% of our entire ocean. We know more about our moon than we do our own planet. So big questions. I will continue to have these episodes where I'm talking about this. And again, more reports are coming, I promise. And there's some big questions to be revealed. So like they say in the X-Files, the truth is out there. It's just a matter of time now before we start to unfold and experience that. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you today. Thanks for listening to Inspired Living Radio. Come join us again. And you can also find us over on OMTimes Radio and Media. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.